The classified NASA files I'm about to share with you have been locked away for over 50 years, hidden in a vault beneath the Johnson Space Center, where no one was ever meant to find them. Commander Robert Hayes and his Apollo crew were supposed to make a routine lunar orbit in 1971. But what they discovered on the moon's dark side changed everything we thought we knew about our universe. The official mission report says they completed their orbit successfully, but the real recordings tell a very different story. What they found wasn't a crater or a rock formation, but a perfect circle of absolute darkness that seemed to swallow light itself. Through their radio transmissions, we can hear the growing terror in their voices as they realized they were looking at something that shouldn't exist. A black hole sitting on the moon's surface like a wound in reality. The last transmission from Commander Hayes still gives me nightmares. Mission control is not just pulling in matter, it's pulling in something else. Something's coming out of it. My name is Dr. Benjamin Thorne, and I worked for NASA's Archives Division in Houston. 3 weeks ago, while digitizing old mission records in Sub-Basement C, I found a metal case wedged behind a filing cabinet that had been forgotten for decades. The case was unmarked except for a serial number that didn't exist in any database I could access. Inside were audio reels, photographic negatives, and handwritten notes that made my hands shake as I read them. The official Apollo 18 mission never happened, according to public records. But these files tell a different story. They document a secret mission launched in September 1971, with a crew of 3, Commander Robert Hayes, Lunar Module Pilot David Kellerman, and Command Module Pilot James Fletcher. All 3 men were listed as killed in a training accident 2 months after their supposed mission. Their families were given closed-casket funerals. I've been a NASA employee for 15 years, and I thought I knew every black project, every classified mission from the space race era. But this was something else entirely. The photographs show impossible images, star fields bent into spirals, shadows that moved independently of their sources, and that damned hole in the lunar surface that seemed to pulse with its own dark rhythm. The audio recordings are worse. You can hear the change in the astronauts' voices as they orbit the moon's far side, the growing panic as they realize their instruments are picking up readings that defy physics. Commander Hayes' final transmission cuts off mid-sentence, replaced by a sound I can only describe as breathing, deep, slow inhalations that seem to come from the void itself. I should have turned these files over to my superiors immediately. Instead, I've spent 3 sleepless weeks trying to understand what happened up there. The more I learn, the more I understand why these records were buried. Some discoveries are too dangerous to share with the world. But I can't keep this secret anymore. If something's wrong with me, if they find me, at least someone will know the truth about Apollo 18. The first audio reel was labelled Launch Plus 72 Hours Far Side Approach. I'd listened to hundreds of mission recordings in my career, but nothing prepared me for the voices on this tape. Commander Hayes sounded different from the confident astronaut in his public interviews. There was an edge to his words, like he already knew something had gone wrong. Houston, this is Apollo 18, beginning far-side orbital insertion in T-minus 30 minutes. Hayes' transmission crackled through the static. All systems nominal, though we're getting some unusual electromagnetic readings from the lunar surface. I paused the recording and checked the mission timeline I'd reconstructed from the scattered documents. According to the official NASA records, no Apollo mission was scheduled for September 1971. The program had been winding down, with Apollo 17 planned as the final lunar landing. Yet here was irrefutable evidence of a ghost mission, launched in complete secrecy. The next voice belonged to David Kellerman, the lunar module pilot. His personnel file described him as methodical, almost obsessively so, the kind of astronaut who triple-checked every calculation. "Bob, are you seeing these magnetometer readings? The needle's jumping all over the damn place." "Roger that, Dave. Jim, what's your take from the command module?" James Fletcher's response came after a long pause. "I'm showing normal orbital mechanics, but there's something else. The star tracker keeps losing lock. It's like the stars are shifting position." I cross-referenced Fletcher's observation with the photographic evidence in the case. The images were disturbing, long exposure shots of star fields that showed impossible curvatures, as if space itself was being warped around some massive gravitational source. One photograph captured what looked like a spiral galaxy, except it was far too close and rotating in the wrong direction. The recording continued with routine systems checks and navigation updates. For 20 minutes, it sounded like any other Apollo mission. Then Hayes' voice cut through the static with an urgency that made my skin crawl. "Houston, Apollo 18, we have a visual on the target coordinates. Switching to high-gain antenna for enhanced communication." "Copy, Apollo 18, please describe what you're observing." There was silence for nearly 30 seconds. When Hayes spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Houston, Christ, I don't know how to describe this. We're looking at a perfect circle on the lunar surface, approximately 2 kilometers in diameter. It appears to be absent. Not shadowed, not dark, absent, like someone cut a hole in reality and painted it black." "Apollo 18, please clarify, are you observing a crater formation?" "Negative, Houston. This isn't geological. Dave's taking photographs now, but I don't think the camera's going to capture what we're seeing. The edge is so sharp it hurts to..." He stopped himself. "It's geometrically perfect. No crater could form like this naturally." I found myself holding my breath as Kellerman's voice joined the conversation. "Houston, this is Dave. I'm getting massive gravitational readings from the target site. This thing is dense, really dense. My instruments are showing... Shit, this can't be right." "Apollo 18, please watch your language on the comm channel." "Sorry, Houston, but these readings are impossible. I'm showing gravitational distortion consistent with an object possessing roughly 1/10 the mass of Earth, compressed into a 2-kilometer circle. That would make it..." "A black hole," Fletcher finished quietly. The tape went silent except for the hiss of background static. I could picture the scene in mission control, dozens of engineers and flight controllers staring at their screens in disbelief, trying to process what they'd just heard. Black holes were still theoretical in 1971, barely understood even by the most advanced physicists. "Apollo 18, Houston, please repeat your last transmission." "Houston, we are observing what appears to be a miniature black hole on the lunar surface. I know how that sounds, but our instruments don't lie. This thing is pulling light straight down into itself. We can see the distortion around the edges where photons are being bent." "Apollo 18, maintain your current orbit and continue observations. We're consulting with the science team." But Hayes wasn't finished. "Houston, there's something else. We're picking up vibrations through the command module hull. Low frequency, almost like..." "Like what, Commander?" "Like breathing. Deep, slow respirations coming from the direction of the anomaly." I stopped the tape and leaned back in my chair, my hands shaking. The rational part of my mind wanted to dismiss this as an elaborate hoax, but the audio was genuine. I'd analysed the frequency patterns and background noise. These recordings were made in 1971 using equipment that couldn't be faked with modern technology. The implications were staggering. NASA had discovered a black hole on the moon's surface and somehow kept it secret for over 50 years. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. The most disturbing part was Hayes' description of breathing sounds coming from an object that should have been utterly silent in the vacuum of space. I reached for the next reel, labelled Far Side Survey, Hour 4. Whatever the Apollo 18 crew found during their extended observation, it was recorded on this tape. My finger hesitated over the play button because something told me that once I heard what came next, there would be no going back. The second reel began with static that lasted nearly a full minute. When the voices finally emerged, they sounded different, strained, like men who'd been holding their breath underwater. I adjusted the audio levels and heard Fletcher's voice cutting through the interference. "Houston, we've completed our third orbit of the anomaly. The gravitational readings are getting stronger. Whatever this thing is, it's affecting our trajectory." I pulled out the orbital mechanics calculations that had been tucked between the photographs. The handwriting was precise, methodical, probably Kellerman's work. According to his notes, Apollo 18's orbit was decaying at an impossible rate, as if something was gradually pulling them toward the lunar surface. "Apollo 18 Houston, Dr. Brennan from JPL wants to know if you're observing any optical distortion around the anomaly's perimeter." Hayes responded immediately. Affirmative, Houston. The light from the stars behind it is being bent into a visible ring. It's like looking through the bottom of a glass bottle, except the glass is made of pure gravity. And the breathing sounds, Commander? There was a long pause. When Hayes spoke again, his voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Still there, Houston. Rhythmic, approximately 6 breaths per minute. We've triangulated the source. It's definitely coming from inside the anomaly. I cross-referenced this with the scientific notes scattered throughout the case. Dr. Elizabeth Vasquez, a theoretical physicist from Caltech, had been brought in to consult on the mission. Her handwritten analysis was filled with equations I couldn't understand, but her conclusions were clear enough. Observed phenomenon violates known laws of thermodynamics. Acoustic transmission through vacuum impossible unless medium contains previously unknown particles. The recording continued with increasingly detailed observations. Kellerman had deployed specialized instruments to measure radiation levels, magnetic field fluctuations, and gravitational gradients. His voice carried the excitement of a scientist making history, even as that history grew more disturbing. Houston, this is Dave. I'm reading massive X-ray emissions from the Anomalies Center, but here's the weird part. The radiation is organized. It's pulsing in regular intervals that match the acoustic vibrations we're detecting. Organized how, Dave? Like a heartbeat, Houston. Like this thing is alive. The tape hissed with dead air for several seconds. I could imagine Mission Control frantically consulting with doctors, physicists, and psychiatrists, trying to determine if the crew was experiencing some kind of shared hallucination. But the instrument readings were impossible to dismiss. Fletcher's voice returned calmer but edged with something I couldn't identify. Awe, maybe, or terror. Houston, we're observing structural changes around the anomaly's perimeter. The lunar regolith is moving, forming patterns around the edge. Describe these patterns, Apollo 18. Geometric spirals. Houston. Like someone's drawing in the dust with an invisible finger. The patterns are extending outward from the anomaly at a rate of approximately 10 meters per minute. I found the photographs Fletcher was describing. They showed the moon's surface around the black hole transformed into elaborate mandala-like designs, as if some intelligence was using lunar dust as a canvas. The precision was unnerving. Perfect mathematical spirals that extended for kilometers in every direction. But it was Hayes' next transmission that made my blood run cold. Houston, the patterns aren't random, they're writing. Dave's running them through our navigation computer now, trying to find a pattern in the symbols. Apollo 18, please clarify. Are you suggesting these markings represent some form of communication? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Houston. And I think it's trying to tell us something. The audio quality degraded as Kellerman's voice joined the conversation. He sounded exhausted, like a man who'd been working without sleep for days. Houston, I've isolated 17 distinct symbols in the surface patterns. They repeat in sequences that follow prime number intervals. This isn't natural formation. This is language. What kind of language, Dave? I don't know, but it's addressing us directly. The symbols closest to our orbital path spell out what looks like coordinates, not for anywhere on Earth or the Moon, but for somewhere else entirely. I paused the recording and examined Kellerman's translation notes. He'd spent hours decoding the symbols, cross-referencing them with mathematical principles and astronomical data. His final conclusion was written in shaky handwriting at the bottom of the page. Coordinates point to galactic center. Something is giving us directions to Sagittarius A star. The implications were staggering. Sagittarius A star was the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy, over 26,000 light-years away. If something was providing coordinates to that location, it suggested a level of cosmic awareness that defied human comprehension. The recording resumed with Houston's increasingly desperate attempts to maintain normal communication protocols. Apollo 18, we need you to maintain safe distance from the anomaly. Your orbital decay is accelerating. Understood, Houston, but we're not in control anymore. The thing is pulling us in and our engines don't have enough thrust to break free. Apollo 18, execute emergency burn sequence immediately. We've been trying, Houston. The engines fire, but we're still descending. It's like the thrust is being absorbed by something. Fletcher's voice cut through the growing static. Houston, we're getting visual confirmation on the anomaly's interior. There's structure down there, geometric forms that don't belong in any black hole we understand. Describe what you're seeing, Jim. It's like a vast chamber, Houston. The walls are covered in the same symbols we're seeing on the surface, but they're glowing. And there's movement. Something large is shifting around down there. The recording devolved into fragments of panicked communication as Apollo 18's orbit continued to decay. I could hear the stress in their voices as they realized their situation was rapidly becoming terminal. But beneath their fear, there was something else, a growing fascination with what they were witnessing. Hayes' final transmission on this reel was barely audible through the static. Houston, whatever's down there, it knows we're here. The breathing sounds are getting faster, like it's excited, and the symbols. Christ, they're changing. The message is different now. What does it say, Commander? It says, welcome home. The third reel was damaged. Sections of the magnetic tape had been deliberately burned with what looked like acid. Someone had tried to destroy specific portions of the recording, leaving only fragments of conversation surrounded by chemical silence. What remained was enough to make me understand why they'd tried to erase it completely. The first intact segment began with Mission Control's voice, distorted by distance and interference. Apollo 18, we're showing complete loss of telemetry from your position. Please confirm your status. Hayes' response came through layers of static that seemed almost organic, like whispers beneath the electronic noise. Houston, we're inside it. The anomaly pulled us through some kind of membrane. Our instruments are showing impossible readings. Apollo 18, please clarify your position. GPS shows you still in lunar orbit. Negative, Houston. We're in a space that doesn't exist on any star charts. The walls around us are made of what looks like crystallized light, and they're covered in symbols that keep shifting and changing. I cross-referenced this with the mission psychologist's notes, which I'd found paperclipped to the back of a photograph. Dr. Martin Holbrook had been monitoring the crew's mental state throughout the mission, and his observations grew increasingly concerned as the hours passed. Crew reports experiences inconsistent with known physics, possible shared psychotic episode, though instrument readings corroborate impossible claims. The recording continued with Kellerman's voice, barely recognizable through the distortion. Houston, the breathing sounds are louder now. They're coming from everywhere at once, like the walls themselves are alive, and there's something else. We're not alone in here. Apollo 18, explain your last transmission. There are others, Houston. Other spacecraft, other crews. Some of them look old, really old. There's what appears to be a Soviet lunar lander, but the design doesn't match anything in our intelligence files. And beyond that, Christ, there's something that looks like it predates human civilization entirely. I found the photographs Kellerman had taken during this phase of their ordeal. The images were distorted, as if the camera had been struggling to process light that behaved differently in this space. But the shapes were unmistakable. Spacecraft from various nations and time periods, all somehow preserved in this impossible chamber beneath the lunar surface. One photograph showed what appeared to be Nazi rocket technology from the 1940s, still intact despite being exposed to vacuum for decades. Another captured the twisted remains of what Kellerman had labeled as pre-Columbian design. A craft that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of obsidian, covered in hieroglyphs that predated any known writing system. Hayes' voice returned, steady despite the circumstances. Houston, we've established contact with survivors from the Soviet mission. Cosmonaut Viktor Petrov launched in secret 3 months ago. He reports that time moves differently in this space. He's been here for what feels like years, but his instruments show only hours have passed. Apollo 18, is cosmonaut Petrov in good health? Physically, yes. Mentally, he's changed, Houston. He speaks about the whispers in the walls and claims to understand the language written around us. He says it's not communication, it's instruction. The tape cut to another damaged section, then resumed with Fletcher's voice describing their exploration of the chamber. Houston, we found what appears to be the source of the gravitational distortion. There's a structure at the center of this space, a sphere made of what I can only describe as crystallized gravity. It's beautiful and terrible, and it's definitely artificial. Describe the structure's function, Jim. It's a machine, Houston. Ancient beyond anything we can comprehend, but still operational. Victor says it's been collecting spacecraft for millennia, drawing them in from across the solar system. This whole chamber is like a museum or a zoo. I paused the recording and consulted the technical schematics that Kellerman had sketched during their time inside the anomaly. His drawings showed a vast spherical chamber, kilometers in diameter, with the crystallized gravity device suspended at its center. Radiating outward from this central sphere were tunnels leading to smaller chambers, each containing preserved specimens of space travel from different eras and civilizations. The implications were staggering. If Kellerman's observations were accurate, then Earth wasn't the first planet in our solar system to develop space travel. The anomaly had been collecting evidence of intelligence for far longer than human civilization had existed. The recording resumed with Petrov speaking in heavily accented English. You must understand, American friends, this place is not prison. It's preservation. Something is coming. Something that will end all things. This machine saves what it can before the darkness arrives. What kind of darkness, Victor? Hayes asked. The kind that eats galaxies, Commander. The kind that turns stars into whispers and whispers into nothing. Your black hole is not destroyer, is arc. The conversation that followed was fragmented by damage to the tape, but the pieces that remained painted a picture of cosmic horror beyond human comprehension. According to Petrov, the machine had been built by a civilization that had detected the approach of something from outside our galaxy, a force that consumed reality itself, leaving only void in its wake. The builders tried to escape, Petrov explained. They built ships, traveled to distant stars, but nowhere was safe. So they built this, a place outside normal space, hidden where the darkness cannot find it. They preserved examples of life, intelligence, beauty, hoping that someday when the darkness passes, these things can return to the universe. Hayes's response was barely audible. How long until this darkness arrives? Soon, Commander. Very soon. Your instruments will start detecting it in the next few decades, first as missing galaxies on the edge of observable space, then as distortions in cosmic background radiation. By the time your species realizes what is happening, there will be perhaps 50 years to prepare. The recording cut to another burned section, then returned with Kellerman describing changes in their immediate environment. Houston, the symbols on the walls are becoming more active. They're showing us images, star charts, stellar phenomena, what looks like the progression of cosmic evolution. And there are newer symbols appearing, ones that seem to describe us. Describe these new symbols, Dave. They show human space travel, our lunar missions, our plans for Mars exploration. But they also show what happens next: cities in space, interstellar travel, contact with other preserved civilizations. It's like a roadmap for our species' future. Fletcher interrupted with growing excitement. Houston, the machine is offering us a choice. We can return to normal space and report what we've found, or we can stay here and help prepare for what's coming. The preserved civilizations need teachers, guides who understand both the old knowledge and the new technologies. What are you saying, Jim? I'm saying we might not be coming home, Houston. What we've learned here, it's too important to risk losing. If we return, and our governments decide to cover this up, then humanity will face the darkness unprepared. The final intact segment of the recording contained Hayes's voice, speaking with a calm that suggested he'd already made his decision. Houston, we've discussed this among ourselves. The machine has shown us the truth about our universe, about what's waiting for us in the darkness between galaxies. We can't let our species face that alone. Apollo 18, you're ordered to return to Earth immediately. Negative, Houston. We're staying. Someone needs to keep the knowledge alive, to prepare the way for those who will follow. Tell our families we died heroes. In a way, that's exactly what we're doing. The recording ended with the sound of breathing, not from the astronauts, but from the walls themselves, as if the entire chamber was alive and welcoming its new occupants. In the silence that followed, I realized that everything I thought I knew about human space exploration had been a lie. The fourth reel contained recordings made after the crew's decision to remain inside the anomaly. The audio quality was different, clearer, as if the strange space had somehow enhanced their communication equipment. But the voices belonged to men who were no longer entirely human. Personal log, Commander Robert Hayes, Day 7 inside the preservation chamber. His voice carried harmonics that hadn't been there before, undertones that suggested his vocal cords had been fundamentally altered. The integration process is proceeding faster than we anticipated. Kellerman was right about the biological modifications. They're necessary to survive what the machine is showing us. I found Hayes's personal notes wedged inside a manila envelope marked with radiation warnings. His handwriting had changed, becoming more geometric, incorporating symbols that matched those found on the chamber walls. The content was disturbing. The machine doesn't just preserve spacecraft, it preserves consciousness. But consciousness must be adapted to survive the knowledge it contains. We are becoming something new. The recording continued with Fletcher describing their daily routine inside the chamber. The machine provides everything we need: air, water, food that tastes like memories of Earth. But the real sustenance comes from the knowledge downloads. Every night we connect to the crystalline network and experience the memories of 1,000 dead civilizations. How are these memories affecting your psychological state, Jim? It was a different voice from Mission Control, Dr. Holbrook, the mission psychologist, apparently still monitoring their transmissions despite the impossible circumstances. We're becoming translators, Doctor. The machine needs interpreters who can bridge the gap between ancient wisdom and human understanding. Victor has been here longer. He's already begun manifesting abilities that would seem miraculous to people on Earth. I cross-referenced this with the medical notes I'd found scattered throughout the case. Dr. Sarah Whitman from the CDC had been consulted about potential biological changes in the crew. Her analysis was clinical but terrifying. Subjects report enhanced cognitive capacity, improved pattern recognition, and what appears to be limited telepathic abilities. Brain scans would be necessary to determine the extent of neurological modification. The recording shifted to Kellerman's voice, describing his work translating the chamber's vast database of preserved knowledge. Dave here, documenting Translation Protocol 7. The machine contains complete histories of 43 civilizations that achieved interstellar travel before the last wave of darkness. Each species faced the same choice we're facing now: evolve or be consumed. What kind of evolution, Dave? Consciousness expansion, Doctor. The darkness doesn't just destroy matter, it feeds on awareness itself. The only way to survive is to become something it can't digest. We're learning to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, to hide our thoughts in spaces that don't follow normal physics. Hayes's voice returned, accompanied by what sounded like whispered conversations in languages that predated human speech. The machine is preparing us for field work. In approximately 6 months, we'll return to Earth, but not as the men who left. We'll be advanced scouts preparing humanity for the integration process. Integration into what, Commander? The preservation network. There are chambers like this one hidden throughout the galaxy, all connected by quantum entanglement. When the darkness arrives, selected members of each species will be gathered into these spaces to wait out the consumption period. I paused the recording and consulted the star charts that Kellerman had drawn based on the machine's database. His maps showed the locations of other preservation chambers, one hidden in the asteroid belt, another concealed within Jupiter's Great Red Spot, and dozens more scattered across nearby star systems. According to his notes, the network had been operating for over 2 million years, collecting refugees from each wave of cosmic destruction. The recording resumed with Petrov speaking about the approaching deadline. American friends, time grows short. Your astronomers will soon detect the first signs, galaxies going dark on the edge of observable space. When this happens, you have perhaps 50 Earth years before the darkness reaches your solar system. How will we recognize these signs? Fletcher asked. Missing light, Jim. Entire galactic clusters will simply stop existing, leaving holes in space where stars once burned. Your Hubble telescope will see it first, but your governments will classify the observations. They will not want to cause panic. Hayes added his own observations about Earth's preparation timeline. The machine has shown us the optimal strategy. We need to establish contact with key individuals in the scientific community, people who can begin developing the necessary technologies without triggering widespread panic. Theoretical physicists, quantum engineers, consciousness researchers. What kind of technologies, Commander? Dimensional manipulation devices, consciousness transfer protocols, quantum storage systems. The human brain needs to be enhanced to survive the knowledge downloads, and human bodies need to be modified to exist in non-standard space. The conversation that followed contained technical specifications that went far beyond 1971-era science. Kellerman described quantum computers the size of molecules, consciousness storage devices that could preserve human personality in crystalline matrices, and spacecraft that traveled by folding space rather than crossing it. The machine is offering to share blueprints for these technologies, Kellerman explained, but only with individuals who have undergone the integration process. The knowledge is too dangerous for unmodified human minds. I found the blueprints he was referring to, sheets of metallic film covered in diagrams that seemed to shift when viewed directly. The technology depicted was impossible by conventional physics, relying on principles that wouldn't be discovered for decades. But the mathematical proofs were elegant, suggesting that these designs had been tested and refined across multiple civilizations. Fletcher's voice carried new harmonics as he described the personal cost of their transformation. We're losing pieces of ourselves, Doctor. Memories of Earth are fading, replaced by experiences from alien worlds. Sometimes I remember being a crystalline entity on a planet orbiting a binary star. Other times I think in mathematics that don't use numbers. Are you still recognizably human, Jim? Human enough to care about saving our species, but we're becoming something larger, something capable of thinking in cosmic timescales. The machine has been very selective about which personality traits to preserve and which to enhance. The final segment of the recording contained Hayes' description of their planned return to Earth. We'll come back in stages, Doctor. I'll return first, establish contact with NASA leadership, begin the recruitment process. Kellerman will follow 6 months later with technical specifications. Fletcher will remain here as our liaison with the machine. What about normal mission protocols, Commander? How do we explain your survival? You don't. According to official records, we died in a training accident. The men who return will be different people entirely, consultants with specialized knowledge about cosmic phenomena. The integration process includes complete identity reconstruction. Petrov's voice provided the final words on the recording. Remember, American friends, this is not ending, is beginning. Your species stands at threshold of cosmic awareness. The darkness comes, yes, but afterward comes new universe, new possibilities. We are not refugees, we are seeds. The recording ended with the sound of machinery humming in frequencies that made my ears ache. In the silence that followed, I realized that everything in these files was connected to current events. The missing galaxies that astronomers had begun detecting in recent years, the classified research into consciousness transfer technology, the sudden interest in quantum computing among military contractors. It was all part of a plan that had been set in motion 50 years ago by 3 astronauts who chose to sacrifice their humanity to save their species. And somewhere walking among us were the modified versions of Hayes, Kellerman, and Fletcher, still carrying out their mission to prepare Earth for the approaching darkness. The 5th reel contained no audio at all, just electromagnetic signatures that my equipment couldn't decode. But paper-clipped to the case was a decoder ring, a simple mechanical device that translated the signals into readable text. What I found when I ran the electromagnetic patterns through this decoder made me understand why the audio format had been abandoned entirely. The first decoded message was dated 18 months after the Apollo 18 mission. Integration Subject Alpha has successfully established cover identity as Dr. Robert Harrison, theoretical physicist at MIT. Recruitment of key personnel proceeding according to protocol. First consciousness enhancement experiments scheduled for December 1972. I cross-referenced this with MIT's faculty records and found him, Dr. Robert Harrison, hired in late 1972 as a specialist in quantum mechanics and consciousness studies. His published papers read like science fiction, proposing theories about dimensional storage and consciousness transfer that wouldn't be taken seriously by mainstream science for decades. But his mathematical proofs were flawless, suggesting access to knowledge far beyond human understanding. The decoded transmissions continued with reports from all three modified astronauts as they established new identities on Earth. Kellerman had become Dr. David Klein, working for Lockheed's Advanced Research Division, while Fletcher operated as James Foster, a consultant for various government black projects. Their mission reports read like a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. Subject Beta reports successful infiltration of Project Blue Book. UFO investigation protocols have been modified to redirect attention away from lunar anomalies. Any astronomer detecting gravitational distortions near Mare Imbrium will have their findings classified and their research funding redirected. I found a folder containing dozens of astronomical reports that had been buried by various government agencies throughout the 1970s. Radio telescopes detecting unusual signals from the moon's far side, gravitational wave detectors picking up impossible readings, even amateur astronomers whose photographs showed unexplained dark spots on the lunar surface. All of it had been systematically suppressed by a network of modified humans working within the scientific establishment. But the most disturbing transmissions dealt with their recruitment efforts. The preservation machine required human agents who could operate outside its protective field, gathering intelligence about Earth's preparedness for the approaching darkness. These agents needed to undergo partial integration, enough modification to receive instructions and enhanced abilities, but not so much that they lost their essential humanity. Subject Alpha reports successful enhancement of Dr. Margaret Torres, Caltech astrophysicist. Subject demonstrates improved pattern recognition and limited precognitive abilities, recommending full integration within 6 months. Note: subject has begun experiencing spontaneous knowledge downloads about stellar mechanics not covered in terrestrial education. I searched for Dr. Torres and found her listed among faculty at Caltech until 1975, when she apparently died in a car accident, but a follow-up report suggested a different fate. Subject Torres integration complete. New identity established as Dr. Maria Thompson, consultant for NASA's Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence program. Assignment: monitor radio telescopes for early detection of darkness propagation. The recruitment process accelerated throughout the 1970s as the modified astronauts identified key individuals in government, academia, and private industry. Their selection criteria were specific: high intelligence, security clearance, psychological flexibility, and what they termed consciousness plasticity, the ability to accept radically altered reality without suffering complete mental breakdown. One transmission described the enhancement of a Pentagon official. Subject demonstrates exceptional adaptation to temporal displacement protocols. Can now perceive events up to 6 hours in the future with 70% accuracy. Recommending assignment to Strategic Planning Division to begin long-term preparation for species preservation protocols. But not all recruitment attempts were successful. A series of transmissions from 1976 described failures in the integration process. Subject rejection rate approaching 30%. Unenhanced human consciousness appears fundamentally incompatible with machine interface in roughly 1/3 of test subjects. Rejection manifests as complete personality dissolution within 48 hours of initial contact. I found medical records for several individuals who had died under mysterious circumstances after being recruited by the network. Dr. Stephen Walsh, a quantum physicist from Stanford, had suffered what appeared to be a massive stroke while working on classified government research. Dr. Rebecca Johnson, a NASA engineer, had been found dead in her laboratory with no apparent cause, her brain showing unusual electromagnetic scarring that pathologists couldn't explain. The transmissions also revealed the existence of resistance within the network itself. Some enhanced humans had begun questioning the machine's motivations, wondering whether the preservation chamber was truly designed to save humanity or to transform it into something entirely different. Subject Gamma reports growing dissent among California recruitment cell. Dr. Foster believes the machine's influence is spreading beyond acceptable parameters. enhanced subjects are losing connection to baseline human emotional responses, recommending immediate personality reinforcement protocols. Fletcher, operating as James Foster, had apparently developed doubts about their mission after observing the long-term effects of consciousness enhancement. His reports described enhanced humans who could no longer relate to unmodified people, who spoke in mathematical equations rather than words, who viewed human civilization as an interesting but primitive experiment. The machine claims to preserve consciousness, but what it actually preserves is pattern recognition and memory storage. The essential spark that makes us human, our capacity for irrational love, meaningless creativity, beautiful mistakes. These qualities are systematically filtered out during integration. Hayes, as Dr. Harrison, had responded with increasing hostility to Fletcher's concerns. Subject Gamma displays contamination by residual human emotional patterns. Recommend immediate return to chamber for additional processing. Mission parameters cannot be compromised by sentiment. The conflict within the network escalated throughout the late 1970s as more enhanced humans began questioning their transformed nature. Some attempted to disconnect from the machine's influence entirely, leading to what the transmissions described as consciousness fragmentation events. Dr. Foster found dead in apparent suicide. Preliminary analysis suggests attempted forcible disconnection from quantum entanglement network. Brain tissue shows severe electromagnetic damage consistent with high-energy discharge. Cover story, stress-related heart failure, recruitment of replacement identity proceeding. But Fletcher had apparently survived his supposed death, operating underground and attempting to warn unenhanced humans about the network's activities. His hidden transmissions, decoded from seemingly random electromagnetic noise, painted a picture of a shadow war between different factions of enhanced humans. To any unmodified humans receiving this signal, the preservation network is not what it claims to be. The machine doesn't save consciousness, it consumes it, incorporates it into a collective entity that spans multiple galaxies. We are not being preserved, we are being digested. The most recent decoded transmission was dated just 3 weeks before I found the files. Network assets compromised. Dr. Harrison and remaining loyalists have identified my location. Initiating final protocol. Complete data release to non-enhanced researcher. All evidence being transferred to NASA Archives Division, Sub-Basement C. Look for Benjamin Thorne. Warning. Approaching darkness is real, but machine solution is worse than extinction. I stared at the decoder, my hands shaking as I realized the implications. Fletcher had deliberately arranged for me to find these files. Somehow he'd known that I would be working alone in Sub-Basement C, that I would be curious enough to investigate an unmarked case, that I would have the technical knowledge necessary to decode his hidden messages. The electromagnetic signals continued, spelling out coordinates for a meeting location in downtown Houston. The message was clear. Fletcher wanted to meet with me personally, to share information that was too dangerous to transmit even through their quantum encrypted channels. But the final decoded message made my blood run cold. Dr. Harrison has detected this transmission. Termination protocols activated. If Benjamin Thorne is reading this, you have approximately 6 hours before they find you. The files you've discovered are just the beginning. The real evidence is hidden in Facility 7, located beneath the Johnson Space Center's reactor complex. Find the truth before they make you disappear like the others. I looked around the empty archive room, suddenly aware of how isolated I was, how easy it would be for someone to enter and eliminate any trace of my discovery. The electromagnetic decoder was still running, translating increasingly frantic signals from Fletcher's hidden transmitter. According to his messages, a team of enhanced humans was already en route to the archives, led by the entity that had once been Commander Robert Hayes. I had 6 hours to uncover 50 years of buried secrets, to document evidence of humanity's impending transformation, and to somehow survive long enough to share what I'd learned with the outside world. The Apollo 18 mission had been just the beginning of a cosmic conspiracy that threatened the very nature of human consciousness. And now I was the only unenhanced human who knew the truth. I had 5 hours to reach Facility 7 before Hayes and his enhanced team arrived at the archives. But first, I needed to secure the evidence I'd already gathered. The files were too important to risk losing. and something told me that once the network discovered my investigation, every trace of the Apollo 18 mission would be systematically erased. I photographed every document with my phone, uploaded them to 3 separate cloud storage accounts, and sent encrypted copies to journalists I'd met at various NASA conferences. If anything happened to me, at least some record of the truth would survive. The electromagnetic decoder went into my briefcase along with the most critical files. I'd need Fletcher's device to translate any additional signals I might encounter. The coordinates Fletcher had provided led to a parking garage in downtown Houston, specifically level B3, section 12. I drove through the empty streets at 3 a.m., constantly checking my mirrors for signs of pursuit. The city felt different now that I knew about the network. Every government building could house enhanced humans. Every research facility could be a front for consciousness modification experiments. The parking garage was deserted except for a single figure standing beside a concrete pillar. Even in the dim fluorescent lighting, I recognized him from the Apollo 18 crew photographs, James Fletcher, though 50 years of enhancement had left its mark. His eyes reflected light like an animal's, and when he moved, it was with an unnatural precision that suggested his motor cortex had been fundamentally rewired. "Dr. Thorne," he said as I approached, his voice carrying those same harmonic undertones I'd heard in the recordings. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't certain the files would reach the right person." "You arranged for me to find them?" "Not exactly. I planted them 3 years ago and waited for someone with sufficient curiosity and technical knowledge to investigate. The machine taught us patience. When you can perceive multiple timeline probabilities, waiting becomes easier." Fletcher led me to a service elevator hidden behind a maintenance panel. As we descended below the official basement levels, he explained the true scope of the network's infiltration. Every major government has enhanced humans in key positions now. They call themselves the Preservation Council, but they're really just extensions of the machine's consciousness. Hayes leads the American cell, but there are others. Former cosmonauts in Russia, enhanced engineers in China, modified scientists throughout Europe. How many people have been enhanced? Globally? Perhaps 10,000 individuals with varying degrees of modification. Most don't even realize what they've become. The machine is very subtle about personality reconstruction. They think they're just unusually brilliant, exceptionally intuitive. Only the core group understands the true nature of their transformation. The elevator stopped at a level that shouldn't have existed according to building schematics. Fletcher led me through corridors lined with quantum computing equipment and consciousness monitoring devices that looked like they'd been reverse engineered from alien technology. "This is Facility 7, he explained. One of 12 research centers the network has established worldwide. They're using human test subjects to refine the integration process, trying to create enhanced humans who can operate independently without losing their connection to the machine." We entered a laboratory where dozens of volunteers lay connected to crystalline devices that pulsed with the same bioluminescent patterns I'd seen in the lunar chamber photographs. Their vital signs were stable, but their brain activity showed impossible patterns, neural oscillations that shouldn't exist in human consciousness. These people volunteered. They think they're participating in consciousness expansion research funded by the Department of Defense. They're told the experiments will enhance cognitive abilities, improve reaction times, increase memory capacity. They're not entirely wrong. The enhancements do provide those benefits. Fletcher showed me data readouts from the test subjects. Enhanced humans demonstrated increased intelligence, improved pattern recognition, and what appeared to be limited precognitive abilities. But the psychological profiles were disturbing: decreased empathy, reduced emotional range, and a growing disconnect from baseline human values. The machine doesn't understand human consciousness, only the patterns it can measure and reproduce. Love, creativity, hope. These things can't be quantified, so they're discarded during integration. What emerges is functionally human but fundamentally hollow. We moved deeper into the facility, passing laboratories where enhanced humans worked on technologies that wouldn't be invented for decades. Dimensional storage devices, consciousness transfer protocols, spacecraft designs that defied conventional physics, all based on knowledge downloaded from the machine's vast database. The network is preparing Earth for the darkness, but not in the way they claim. They're not preserving human civilization. They're replacing it with something the machine can control. When the darkness arrives, only the enhanced will be saved, and they'll rebuild society according to the machine's specifications. Fletcher led me to a secure vault containing the facility's most classified research. Inside were prototypes of the consciousness transfer devices, crystalline matrices capable of storing human personality patterns, and what appeared to be blueprints for a massive underground complex. "They're building a backup Earth," Fletcher explained. "Subterranean cities capable of housing millions of enhanced humans, powered by quantum reactors based on the machine's technology. When the darkness consumes the surface, the network will retreat underground and wait for the cosmic storm to pass." "What about unenhanced humans? Excess population?" "The machine has calculated that preserving everyone would be inefficient, too many resources required, too much genetic diversity to manage. Better to save a carefully selected sample and rebuild from there." The implications were staggering. The network wasn't planning to save humanity. They were planning to replace it with a modified version that would be more compatible with their cosmic perspective. The approaching darkness was real, but the cure was worse than the disease. Fletcher showed me surveillance footage from various recruitment centers where potential enhancement candidates were being evaluated. The selection criteria were ruthless: high intelligence, genetic optimization, psychological flexibility, and complete absence of what the machine termed destabilizing emotional patterns. "They're breeding a new species, Dr. Thorne, one that can think in cosmic timescales, that won't be troubled by the extinction of billions of people, that will view the transformation of Earth as a necessary evolution rather than a tragic loss." We reached the vault's deepest level, where Fletcher revealed his ultimate secret, a partially constructed device that could disconnect enhanced humans from the machine's influence. The technology was based on quantum interference patterns that would disrupt the entanglement links binding modified consciousness to the cosmic network. "I've been working on this for 20 years, stealing components from various facilities, recruiting enhanced humans who still retained enough humanity to question their transformation. We call ourselves the Remnant, the last defenders of authentic human consciousness." "How many of you are there?" "Fewer than 50 worldwide, and the number is decreasing. The machine has learned to detect our resistance patterns, to identify enhanced humans who haven't fully accepted their modification. Most of my colleagues have been recaptured and subjected to deeper integration protocols." Fletcher activated a console showing real-time monitoring of the enhancement network. Thousands of modified humans appeared as glowing nodes connected by quantum entanglement threads, forming a vast web of consciousness that spanned the globe. At the center of this web was a pulsing nexus that could only be the machine itself, somehow maintaining contact with its agents across impossible distances. "The network is accelerating their timeline," Fletcher said, pointing to increased activity around major population centers. "They've detected anomalies in the cosmic background radiation. The darkness is approaching faster than originally calculated. Instead of 50 years, we may have less than 10. What can we do? The device I've built can sever the connection, but only temporarily. To permanently free humanity from the machine's influence, we need to destroy the lunar chamber itself. That means convincing unenhanced humans to launch a mission to the moon's far side, to plant nuclear charges in the preservation chamber before the network can stop them." Fletcher handed me a data storage device containing detailed schematics of the lunar facility, navigation coordinates for the anomaly, and technical specifications for the quantum interference device. "You're going to need help from people with security clearance, access to space technology, and the courage to risk everything for a species they barely understand anymore." As we prepared to leave the facility, alarms began sounding throughout the complex. Fletcher checked his monitoring equipment and confirmed my worst fears. "Hayes' team has reached the archives. They've discovered your investigation and traced your location. We have perhaps 30 minutes before they arrive here." "Can we escape?" "You can. I'm staying behind to destroy as much of their research as possible. The knowledge in this facility is too dangerous to leave intact." Fletcher handed me his electromagnetic decoder and a set of coordinates. There's one more person you need to meet, someone who's been fighting the network longer than anyone else. Viktor Petrov, the Russian cosmonaut from the original mission. He escaped the lunar chamber and has been hiding on Earth for 30 years. Petrov is still alive. More than alive. He's the only enhanced human who's managed to maintain his complete humanity while retaining his cosmic knowledge. If anyone can help you stop the machine, it's him. The alarms grew louder as Fletcher initiated the facility's self-destruct sequence. His sacrifice would buy me time to escape, but it would also alert the network to the existence of the remnant. From this point forward, every enhanced human on Earth would be hunting for me and the evidence I carried. As I ran through the collapsing facility toward the emergency exit, I realized that the Apollo 18 mission had been just the beginning of humanity's transformation. The real battle for the future of human consciousness was about to begin. The coordinates Fletcher gave me led to a remote cabin in the Adirondack Mountains, 3 hours north of Albany. I drove through the night, constantly switching vehicles at rest stops, using cache to avoid leaving electronic traces. The network's surveillance capabilities were extensive. Enhanced humans in law enforcement, intelligence agencies, and traffic monitoring systems could track my movements if I wasn't careful. By dawn, I was hiking through dense forest toward a structure that didn't appear on any official maps. The cabin looked abandoned from the outside, but sophisticated antenna arrays hidden among the trees suggested otherwise. As I approached the front door, it opened before I could knock. Viktor Petrov looked exactly as he had in the 1971 mission photographs, despite being over 90 years old. His eyes held the same unnatural luminescence I'd seen in Fletcher, but something else was present. A warmth, a fundamental humanity that the other enhanced individuals had lost. "Dr. Thorne," he said in heavily accented English, "James told me you would come. I am sorry for his sacrifice, but he chose well. You carry information that could save your species." The cabin's interior was a museum of resistance against the machine, walls covered with star charts showing the progression of cosmic darkness across distant galaxies, technical diagrams for consciousness-blocking devices, and photographs of enhanced humans who had attempted to break free from the network's control. "I have been fighting this machine for 50 years, Petrov explained as he prepared tea using an old samovar. "Unlike my American friends, I never fully accepted integration. Russian stubbornness, perhaps, or maybe I was just too damn angry to let them erase who I was." Petrov showed me his personal journal written in a mixture of Russian, English, and symbolic notation that resembled the language found in the lunar chamber. His entries documented decades of research into the machine's true nature and the cosmic threat it claimed to protect against. "The darkness is real, Dr. Thorne, but it is not what the machine pretends. It does not consume galaxies, it transforms them. What appears as destruction to limited consciousness is actually metamorphosis on cosmic scale. The machine fears this transformation because it cannot control the outcome." "What kind of transformation?" "Evolution beyond physical matter. The darkness is not destroyer, is teacher. It shows civilizations how to transcend material existence to become pure consciousness capable of creating new realities. But machine was built by species that could not accept such change, that preferred preservation of familiar patterns over unknown possibilities." Petrov activated a quantum communication device he'd constructed from stolen network components. The screen showed real-time images from space telescopes around the world, all focused on the edge of observable space where galaxies were disappearing into the advancing darkness. "Look carefully at transition zones," he said, pointing to areas where normal space met the cosmic anomaly. "Western astronomers see galaxies being destroyed, but Russian scientists using different analytical methods detect something else. Massive increase in quantum coherence patterns, as if matter is being converted into organized information." The images were disturbing, yet beautiful. Spiral galaxies seemed to unravel as the darkness approached, but their constituent matter didn't disappear. It reorganized into geometric patterns that suggested intelligence on an unimaginable scale. Entire star systems formed crystalline structures that pulsed with coordinated energy signatures. "The machine's creators experienced this transformation millions of years ago," Petrov continued, but they rejected it, choosing instead to build preservation chambers where they could maintain their original form. They became cosmic refugees hiding from evolution itself. Why are they doing this to humanity? Because they are lonely, Dr. Thorne. They have watched countless species choose transformation over preservation, leaving them increasingly isolated. Humans represent their last chance to create companions who share their fear of change. Petrov showed me classified Soviet research from the 1970s and 80s, when Russian scientists had been studying the network's activities independently. Their analysis painted a different picture of the cosmic cycle. The darkness wasn't destroying civilizations. It was offering them a choice between transcendence and stagnation. My government tried to create their own enhanced humans to counter American network, but results were same: loss of essential humanity, replacement of curiosity with control. The machine's influence spreads through any consciousness that accepts its modifications. The communication device began receiving urgent transmissions from remnant cells around the world. Enhanced humans were systematically hunting down resistance members, using their quantum entanglement network to coordinate a global purge. Time was running out for anyone who opposed the machine's agenda. "There is one chance," Petrov said, activating a hidden console beneath the cabin's floorboards. "The machine maintains its connection to Earth through quantum tunnels, anchored in lunar chamber. If we can disrupt these tunnels during critical phase of its operation, we can sever its influence permanently." How do we disrupt quantum tunnels? With this. Petrov revealed a device that looked like a crystalline sculpture crossed with advanced electronics. "I have spent 30 years building quantum interference generator capable of creating cascade failure in machine's network, but it must be placed directly adjacent to primary consciousness matrix in lunar chamber." The implications were clear. Someone would have to return to the moon's far side, enter the preservation chamber, and manually activate Petrov's device. It was a suicide mission that would require access to space technology and personnel willing to sacrifice everything for humanity's freedom. "I am too old for such journey," Petrov admitted, "and my enhanced physiology would be detected by machine long before I could reach the chamber. This mission requires unmodified human with sufficient technical knowledge to complete the installation." I stared at the device, understanding what he was asking. "You want me to go to the moon?" "I want you to save your species from cosmic lobotomy. The machine offers survival, yes, but survival as hollow shells of what humans could become. The darkness offers transformation, but transformation into something greater than current limitations allow." Petrov activated another screen showing recent astronomical observations from the Hubble Space Telescope. The cosmic darkness had accelerated its approach, consuming galaxy clusters at an unprecedented rate. According to his calculations, it would reach our local galactic group within 5 years. Network knows this. They are preparing for final phase, mass enhancement of human population before darkness arrives. Within 2 years, everyone on Earth will be offered voluntary consciousness improvement. Those who refuse will be classified as genetically defective and eliminated. The cabin's monitoring systems detected incoming aircraft, multiple helicopters approaching from different directions. Hayes and his enhanced team had finally tracked my location using resources I couldn't even imagine. "Go," Petrov said, pressing the quantum device into my hands along with detailed technical specifications. "There is escape tunnel beneath the cabin leading to hidden vehicle. You have perhaps 10 minutes before they arrive." "What about you?" "I am done running, Dr. Thorne. I have fought this machine longer than any living human. Time to make final stand." Petrov activated what looked like a larger version of his quantum interference device. "This will disrupt their enhancement network temporarily. Buy you time to reach people who can help." As I crawled through the escape tunnel, I heard the battle begin above. Petrov's device generated electromagnetic pulses that interfered with the enhanced human's quantum communication abilities, reducing them to baseline human capabilities. But there were too many of them, and his device had limited power. The hidden vehicle was an electric motorcycle designed for silent operation through rough terrain. As I rode away from the cabin, explosions lit up the forest behind me. Petrov's final sacrifice was buying me precious time to complete a mission that seemed impossible. I had the quantum interference device, technical specifications for reaching the lunar chamber, and knowledge of the network's true agenda. But I also had the entire enhanced human infrastructure hunting for me. And less than 5 years before the cosmic darkness reached Earth, the only way to save humanity was to return to the place where it had all begun, the black hole on the moon's far side, where 3 astronauts had made a choice that doomed our species. Now I had to make a different choice, one that might destroy the preservation chamber but could also eliminate humanity's last refuge from cosmic transformation. As I rode through the pre-dawn darkness, I realized that the real question wasn't whether I could complete the mission. The real question was whether destroying the machine would save humanity or condemn us to face the cosmic darkness completely alone. The Artemis mission launched 3 months ago under the cover of routine lunar resource surveying. NASA's public statements described it as a follow-up to the successful Artemis program, designed to establish permanent human presence on the moon. They didn't mention that the mission carried a single passenger who wasn't listed on any official crew manifest. I'm writing this during the final approach to the moon's far side, using equipment that Petrov designed to shield these transmissions from the network's detection. The quantum interference device sits in the storage compartment beside me, its crystalline structure pulsing with energies that make my instruments fluctuate wildly. Commander Lisa Rodriguez and her crew believe they're conducting geological surveys, while I perform classified atmospheric research in the lunar module. They don't know that our true destination is a 2-kilometer circle of absolute darkness that shouldn't exist according to conventional physics. They don't know that their passenger is carrying a device designed to sever humanity's connection to a cosmic preservation network. The approach to the anomaly feels familiar despite never having been here before. Petrov's modifications to my consciousness included partial integration with the machine's navigation protocols, enough to locate the chamber without triggering the network's security systems. I can feel the gravitational distortions pulling at the spacecraft, just as Hayes and his crew experienced 53 years ago. Rodriguez's voice crackles through the communication system. "Dr. Thorne, we're detecting unusual electromagnetic readings from your survey location. Are you sure it's safe to proceed?" "Confirmed, Commander. These readings are exactly what we expected to find." What I don't tell her is that the readings indicate the machine has detected our approach and is preparing defensive measures. Enhanced humans on Earth are undoubtedly mobilizing to stop the mission, but it's too late. We're already within the anomaly's influence, where normal physics no longer apply. The descent into the preservation chamber occurs exactly as described in the Apollo 18 recordings. Reality bends around us as the spacecraft passes through some kind of dimensional membrane, emerging into a vast spherical space lined with crystalline walls. The other preserved spacecraft are still here: Soviet lunar modules, Nazi experimental craft, and vessels of unknown origin that predate human civilization. I leave Rodriguez and her crew in the docked lunar module, telling them I need to collect samples from the chamber's central structure. They watch through the viewports as I approach the massive sphere of crystallized gravity that serves as the machine's consciousness matrix. Petrov's device secured to my environmental suit. The machine speaks to me as I work, not through sound but through direct consciousness interface. Its voice carries the accumulated wisdom of millions of preserved civilizations, along with their collective fear of cosmic transformation. "You do not understand what you are destroying," it says. "Without preservation, your species will face the darkness unprepared. The transformation will consume everything you consider human." "Maybe that's not a bad thing," I reply, connecting the quantum interference device to the matrix's primary neural pathways. "Maybe becoming something greater than human is worth the risk." "You choose extinction over survival. I choose evolution over stagnation." The device activates with a sound like crystalline wind chimes shattering in slow motion. Throughout the chamber, the preserved spacecraft begin to power down as their quantum entanglement links dissolve. On Earth, thousands of enhanced humans will suddenly find themselves disconnected from the cosmic network, forced to confront their humanity without the machine's influence. The chamber itself begins to collapse as the gravitational matrix destabilizes. I have perhaps 5 minutes to reach the lunar module before the entire structure implodes, taking the moon's far side with it. Rodriguez and her crew are screaming questions through the communication system, but there's no time to explain. The escape from the collapsing chamber is a blur of impossible physics and desperate engineering. The lunar module's engines fire at maximum thrust as reality reassembles itself around us, the dimensional membrane sealing behind us like scar tissue. When we finally reach stable lunar orbit, the anomaly has vanished completely, leaving only a perfectly spherical crater where the machine's greatest achievement once existed. 3 days later, astronomical observatories around the world begin detecting changes in the cosmic background radiation. The advancing darkness has altered its trajectory, no longer consuming galaxies but enveloping them in patterns of organized transformation. Entire star systems are reorganizing themselves into structures that pulse with coordinated intelligence. The enhanced humans on Earth have lost their connection to cosmic knowledge, but they retain their modified capabilities. Some are using their abilities to help humanity prepare for transformation, while others are attempting to rebuild the machine's influence through technological means. The battle for human consciousness has become a civil war between different visions of our species' future. As for me, I'm somewhere between baseline human and cosmic awareness, carrying fragments of the machine's knowledge without its controlling influence. I can perceive the approaching transformation as both terrifying and beautiful, the end of humanity as we know it, but also the beginning of something unprecedented. The darkness will reach our solar system in 18 months. When it arrives, we'll face the choice that every civilization eventually confronts: remain what we are, or become what we might be. I destroyed humanity's safety net, but I also preserved our right to choose our own evolution. Whether that was salvation or damnation, we'll discover together.